Guys, we got mega big news, guys. You can now become a franchisee of NIO. Yeah, that's incredible. So here is the official poster from NIO talking about this. You can essentially work with NIO if you have a storefront. So let's rewind the clock back a little bit and let's talk about why this is happening. If you look at traditional 4S stores, they're not doing that well these past few years. In 2022, about 4,000 of them closed down. So that's about roughly 10 stores per day closing down. That's pretty bad. So a lot of these 4S stores, they are franchisees as well. They're not doing that well. The boss of that store probably wants to find a way to at least recuperate some losses, find a new product to sell. And this is where NIO jumps in with this fantastic opportunity. And they're allowing these people to essentially switch the brand from their stores to whatever, Jaguar, Land Rover, whatever, to NIO, and essentially train their staff and sell NIO's product. And the three sectors that you can franchise is you can become a storefront, all right, just like a regular 4S store, switch the name. You can also become a service center, and you can also apparently a battery swap station as well. So you can have your own battery swap station if you want and earn money via that, which is incredible, I think. Opening up franchisee model. Now, if we look at some of the cities that they're looking for franchisee models, first of all, very important, at the very top, it says for NIO and NIO's other brands. So that's telling you that potentially other brands, maybe even Alps sub-brand, if it's not going to be in the same brand as NIO, or maybe even Firefly. But this is telling you that there's going to be maybe a potentially second brand. And what's also really interesting is if you look down at the cities that they're looking for, Beijing is one of them, but Shanghai is not. So this is very interesting. It means that they're probably going to go direct and own the stores in Shanghai, because Shanghai is sort of like the home turf for NIO. But also for Hefei, which is very interesting because Hefei is NIO China's home turf. So they're also looking for stores in Hefei as well. And also Beijing. Beijing being the capital of China, we'd expect, Beijing to get the same treatment as Shanghai, but apparently not. So a great example of this is this news article I found. It was a 4S store in Wuhan. Sales were not doing that great, and they came to an agreement, whoever owns that store came to an agreement with NIO to essentially switch that and become a NIO store. And they started selling NIO cars, and they were actually selling much better than the average storefront at all the other NIO stores. So what that tells you is that, first of all, this really keeps the talent that are in the store. So those professional sales reps that's been selling cars for many years, if that becomes a NIO store, they stay there and they sell NIO cars. And perhaps they're able to sell it better than NIO's own stores, which is pretty incredible to think about. And then also, this just shows you that NIO is trying to lower costs, all right? What's really interesting is, even here in Beijing, all right, Beijing, all the stores are owned by NIO, but what you're seeing is the stores themselves, they're individual sub-companies of NIO, essentially. So, for example, if a customer comes to this the service center that I usually go to, and they decide to buy a car there, they place an order, but they test drive in Shine Hills, the Shine Hills store. Those two stores are connected, and the sales rep that helped the customer test drive the car at Shine Hills store might get a little bit of kickback from that order. All right. Of course, that order, majority of the bonuses goes to the original sales rep at store number one. But if they go to a different store here in Beijing, they're completely separated. So even if they test drive there, they will not get any sort of kickback because it's a sub company. So essentially, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these other 4S stores becoming NIO stores, and there's going to be a little bit of a competition essentially between them and the other guys. But of course the pricing is going to be the same, so but there won't be any sort of kickback. For example, if they check the car at the 4S store and then go to a NIO's own store and they buy a car there, there won't be any sort of kickback. So there's going to be quite some competition, but this really shows that NIO is also cutting costs, all right, because opening up your own store, and also especially NIO stores right now are mostly at shopping malls, the rent is extremely expensive, all right, just crazy expensive, way too expensive. And sometimes, you know, I see the amount of customers, it's just definitely not going to be profitable in my opinion, all right. So it makes sense that they're expanding to those smaller 4S stores, essentially changing the brand name to NIO. What's also really interesting is swap stations. So swap stations is very interesting because a while back, a long time back, you could actually become a franchisee for NIO's superchargers, NIO's power chargers. And I thought about maybe this is something interesting to venture into, but one of the more elderly, wise NIO owners said, no, this is not a good thing to do. You don't really earn any money from the chargers. And what's really interesting is even with these swap stations, it's like apparently you just it costs like 3 million. Back then it was Gen 1 swap station, cost like 3 million RMB, and you basically don't earn any money from that because back then swaps were free, so NIO's going to pay you like nothing almost. So apparently back then it wasn't really worth it, but now you know, swap stations are much cheaper. Back then Gen 1 swap stations had a lot of patents from other guys, and so that's why it was so expensive and only had like 6 batteries. Of course it wasn't the best, but now it costs around 1.5 million US dollars for a swap station, and NIO's charging for swaps. Pretty much new NIO owners all have to pay for swaps. So it could be a very good business venture to dive into. And a lot of people, some people do own their own charging stations, and it is a business that some people pursue, have their own charging stations, and it doesn't have to be manned. It's very low maintenance, and it's also just you pay the rent, you pay the electricity, and you get money from it. So opening up your own swap station could be a fantastic addition to their business portfolio. But back to my point at the start of this video, last year 4,000 stores, 4S stores closed down in 2022 in China. You can imagine, you know, when these guys are on the brink of collapse, when they're on the brink of dying out, would they not want the opportunity to thrive once again under NIO's brand and sell NIO's vehicles? Of course, of course. So it's very interesting NIO's going this route. And even way back in like 2018, 2019, when NIO was just getting started, I wasn't in Beijing. I was in Hohhot, Inner Mongolia. And I wanted to check out NIO back then. And even back then, when I checked out NIO, they partnered up with a Porsche 4S store. And they had one sales rep there. When I went there, that person wasn't even there. So that was really interesting, even a long time ago. And even right now in some of the smaller tier cities, it doesn't make sense for NIO to build their own service center. So it makes sense to license out the service work to other service centers for other automobile companies and be sort of like an authorized service center, essentially. So NIO's finding ways to cut costs, which is what I really like. And I think this is absolutely good news because some of these sales reps are so damn talented. And with the Wuhan sales rep example, they're selling more cars than NIO's own stores on average. So this is a tremendous success, I think, for NIO to go down this route. I think this is an excellent way for NIO to really get exposure in a lot of these smaller cities as well. And just have bigger store footprint, man. Having more stores, of course, is going to help out with sales. And they're adding stores at a cheap cost-effective way. Finding ways to save money, that's always a welcome news. And as you can tell, NIO's still expanding. NIO's not contracting. They're not like closing down stores. They're trying to open more stores. They are closing down some stores that are very ineffective, that doesn't meet their sales requirements, and it's just pointless to open that store. They will close it down or perhaps move it somewhere else, but they are still expanding. They're still growing. All right. What do you make of this news? I think it's absolutely fantastic. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.